So he's like the godfather of the whole franchise. I didn't, not that I stayed away from him, but I didn't impose on him, except for one time I went up to him and I said, Mr. Cod, I just want to tell you that I'm not a big horror fan, but the only reason I took this job is I'm such a huge fan of the Halloween series, especially the first one. And he put his hand on my face. He said, it would have been just that much better if you'd been in it. And I thought, what a sweetheart. What a very kind thing. It just made my, it just made my day.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding in even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply...
For over 40 years, the Halloween series has thrilled and terrified audiences. From its low-budget origins to spawning a new era of slashers. The franchise remains a cultural touchstone around the world, often referred to as the Gone with the Wind of horror. From the first chilling notes of the iconic score to the final frame. Join Joel Brown as we explore the iconic horror series, digging deep into the characters, the storylines, and the spine-chilling scares. Welcome to Talking Shape with Joel Brown, the ultimate podcast for Halloween franchise enthusiasts.
Tomorrow night, you will enter the childhood home of our most brutal mass murderer. The home has been rigged up with several cameras, but for the most part, the audience will see only what you see.
Are you sure they're not just putting us in some house with hidden cameras in the shower?
This is gonna be fun.
The windows will be boarded up and all the doors will be locked shut behind them. No one will be allowed to leave until the show is over. Let the dangertainment begin.
You think this is the one that he used to, do his thing? One flash and you could light up 1,000 computer screens.
You are like this close to getting voted off the island. Wait, what just happened? We just lost Bill's camera. There's somebody in the hall. Michael's here! Somebody please help us.
Hello, Michael. I knew you'd come sooner or later. What took you so long?
Trick or treat, mother.
My next guest has an extensive list of credits to his name as a stuntman and actor, but it's his role as the Shape Michael Myers in Halloween Resurrection from 2002 that has made him a household name with horror fans. It's a big hello and welcome to Brad Loree.
Thanks so much. Good day to everybody down there in Australia and fans around the world. Very nice to see you all.
Well, just quickly talking off air, Brad, that you've got some family here in Australia, and I was really happy to hear that you do tipping, like you were talking about the rugby league or in the union, or that you're doing tipping. Now, I have to say that I'm an Aussie rules fan. I just came from the Sydney Swans game last night, so we'll have to get you onto the AFL.
Fair enough. I've got a mate here that's from Melbourne, and he was teaching me a little bit about Aussie rules, and I watched it when I was in Australia. Joel, this summer I turned back in '87, July '87. I turned 27. I bought a one-way around the world ticket for a year, and the last 3 months of my trip were in Australia. And so I worked at the Coogee Bay Hotel, and I was supposed to go up to the Gold Coast, but I met this girl 3 days into my time in Australia. We fell madly in love, and so I never got up north till we broke up 9 weeks later. So, but yeah, Aussie rules.
And so when you were traveling around the world, because I've sort of done a bit of research, you were a bouncer for a while. Were you bouncing in Australia, or were you just traveling?
No, at the Coogee Bay Hotel, I worked as basically a bar porter, bussing tables and running for the booze as the bars got low. My cousin's friend was the manager, and I got to take 4 bags of refreshments up to the boys from Crowded House after a concert they had there one. Yeah, just me and the 4 of the boys. I didn't know who they were at the time, but I'm a big fan of this today.
That was going to be one of my questions. I mean, what sort of music, I guess, sort of sticks with you? What's your go-to music to listen to, or bands?
Oh gosh, well, I've been a Beatles fan since I was 3. I think the Beatles music was the very first music I was consciously aware of, thanks to my cousin Jeff, who lives in Sydney, Australia today. We were just little kids when the cousins that ended up moving to Australia in '66, they were all very musical and are to this day. And but I remember the Beatles, and oh gosh, I love everything, but I don't really have a music I dislike. I try to be open-minded about, the hip hop and the rap that I don't really understand. It's not my culture, but after working with Busta Rhymes, I tried listening to some of his music, but I could not get into it. I mean, I love the guy, but his music's a little above my head.
Now, you might be able to help us out. I was talking to my cousin and uncle over Christmas last year, and they said that there's a band in Canada which is the equivalent of the Beatles. I want to see if you're a Canadian. What band would I be saying if they're the Beatles of? Well, I guess sort of Beatles like to Canada.
They're a Canadian band that are being compared to the Beatles.
Well, I guess that's a big stretch, but they're like one of the Canadian iconic bands. Apparently, loved by everyone. Apparently, even your Prime Minister.
Bare Naked Ladies?
No,
mate, I don't know who that would be. I can't imagine it would be Blue Rodeo.
No,
and I'm 63 in 5 days, Joel. I'm not really up on today's music. Today's art is not my generation, and I don't really know it.
What if I say the Tragically Hip?
Okay. Yes, I know the Tragically Hip very well. They actually wrote a song about my ex-girlfriend when we broke up, and I've seen them 7 times in 6 different venues. But Gord Downey, the lead singer and lyricist, got brain cancer some years back, and he ended up passing away. But they're a long way from the Beatles.
Are they an indeed Canadian band?
Yeah, they're from a place called Kingston, Ontario, which is one of our infamous cities because it's known for its prison. Kingston Prison, that's in Ontario, not too far from the capital.
That's it's amazing. I love sort of just finding out what people are listening to, or sort of bands and things like that. So I sort of go to, I guess, sort of rock, but I could, a bit of alternative, go from some pop or 80s, especially just, you can flick, at the flick of a switch with Spotify. But I've in doing research on you, Brad, sort of just, checking out some interviews that you've done with fans, and you've done an extensive amount of interviews, and I feel you're very gracious with your time speaking to fans of Halloween and horror fans. You do conventions and that, but I guess just wanted to ask, how are you doing? Because obviously learning that you're medically retired, you had a few accidents on your bike.
Yeah, I got into 2 motorcycle wrecks in the spring of 08 and then again in 09. Tried to work for 1 more year, but my body just wasn't. So I've been on disability since September of 2009. I still go, and then for like 8 years I didn't work at all. But I do belong to Stunts Canada, which is like the big stunt group here in the western side of the country. And there's days, Joel, where you're just a passenger in a car, or you're walking across the street. I mean, some days it's a 0 danger, and some days it's a 10. So I still do what we call gravy days. These young kids that are up and coming, they appreciate that I helped them when they were starting out. And I gained a little weight during the pandemic, so I just recently was in a zombie film where I'm the fat guy that comes around the corner and has a heart attack, falls on the girl, and then she gets attacked by the zombie.
Do you is there the young man mentality? You wish you could sort of do the big things again, or are you kind of quite happy just doing as you say, the gravy work?
Well, Joel, if I'm realistic about how much more damage my body can take before I'm in real trouble, I have to be smart about that. But in answer to your question, there's a few gags that I never got to do that I kind of just like to have done at least once. Like I never did a car hit, where you're walking across the street, and I never did a full burn. I say that I never did a really big high fall, but I did do a 60-footer a couple times into boxes. So I kind of downplay that, but I'm quite content. Although they are much, much, much more safety-minded today than they've ever been. I mean, the whole world is, especially after what happened to that poor girl on Deadpool here in Vancouver. But no, what we call fart knockers, where you really take the lumps and you have to hit the concrete, because that's so much harder today, Joel. I don't know what they're making it out of, but I'm quite content to be the stunt actor who says a couple lines and then lays down when he gets shot. But the big stuff, no, I don't want to do that anymore.
You've been around for a while. Do you sort of see yourself with Stunts Canada that you were mentioning there? Like you kind of mentor a lot of young stunt people coming into the industry?
Well, when I say, Joel, is when I was in the loop, I would meet these new kids, and I don't remember being the first stuntman they ever met. I didn't know the first guy that gave them advice and offered to help them. The first guy to ever hire them. I don't remember doing that, but they do. And I just remember, Joel, that when I first came on the scene, there were a couple of guys that weren't real happy about my coming into the business because they were, thought I was going to take work from them or whatever. But anyway, but in Stunts Canada, actually next year is my 25th year. And after 25 years, you get a lifetime member belt buckle, and you no longer have to pay dues after 25 years. So mine's coming up May 16th, 1999 is when I got into the group.
And they'll have a big parade or a big party for you?
I don't know if anybody even give a hoot, or even at the meeting they'll present me with the belt buckle, and hopefully somebody shows up.
Now, as a kid, did you? I know you did a lot of was it Taekwondo or karate? But was there any other sports that you were fond of or that you did, like football? I mean, obviously hockey's big in Canada. But what about football, or what was it?
Joel, I was more of an artistic kid growing up. I loved to draw and I loved to read, even paint. And for a while, my dad was okay with that, put me in arts classes, whatnot. But then I guess he wanted me not necessarily to be an athlete, but he wanted me to have a shot at playing the sports that he never got to do as a kid, because he grew up really poor on the farm out in the prairies. So he had me in baseball, soccer, lacrosse, swim club, everything but hockey, which is the one I asked, because you had to get up at 5 a.m. to take the kids to practice. My dad wasn't doing that, but he'd have me in multiple sports at a time. I remember I was doing 4 sports at a time while supposed to be going to school and getting an education. But the only 2 sports I ever asked to do was hockey and karate.
Yeah, because I asked that because, I mean, you kind of said yourself when you were younger, you're athletic, and I thought sort of if there was a sport where, you'd be somewhat athletic, would that be kind of like a smooth transition into doing stunts?
Yeah, for sure. It's my athleticism, especially the martial arts. I got into the business because whenever an elite actor beats somebody up or shoots somebody, it doesn't look good when a big guy beats up a little guy. They're always average size, so they like the bad guys to be, big goons. I'm 6'2", 2 not right now, but I'm over, big, heavy guy. And so we would do fight scenes or whatever, and I get beat up and eventually go down, get hit with a stick or shot or kicked in the nuts, So, yeah, but my athleticism allowed me to quickly pick up things like motorcycle riding and, air sense, when you did have to do an air rammer that launches you into the air. I mean, I was never great at that, but without those sports, I mean, I've always been of the mindset that, Joel, that if I can do it, anybody can do it. But I've seen people who cannot do it. They don't have the sense of timing. They don't have the concentration, and so it's not something everybody can do.
And I'd imagine it's an industry where, you definitely don't want to lie or bullshit, so to speak, because you'll put yourself in quite a dangerous situation, especially, I guess, sort of back in, the 80s when you were kind of breaking in, because I'd imagine there'd be a lot of, not breaking the rules, but it would be very kind of Wild West.
Well, Joel, on a day of production, they have to get the dialogue shot first, and however long that takes, the action's always left at the end of the day. And sometimes after all your rehearsing and practicing, suddenly you're in a rush and all that goes out, though not all of it, but it's amazing to me there aren't more injuries than there are. Not today. Today, stunts is, we have our own award ceremonies, and we're a little more respected than we used to be, because we were the uneducated knuckleheads back in the day. But today, a couple decades ago, Joel, these second place finishers in these different martial arts and gymnastics, and these athletes that didn't get on the cover of the Wheaties, but they're super talented, discovered, I can work in the film industry as a stunt person. And now these kids that come into the business today are so talented. It just makes me feel like an old dirt on a log.
But that's always been my analogy. Like, say, like when like TV and radio were, just in its infancy, it was so much easier to sort of get your foot in the door because there was, everyone was still learning how it went. And obviously, as things progress, they get more technical or more advanced. And I mean, you got, schools for acting, say, for example. And I mean, is there schools for stunt people? Like, it doesn't seem like there would be.
Joel, back in the day, there was a guy named something Kahana. He had a school in California, and then it moved to Florida. So there was and then the local film school here has a stunt course. But Joel, I always respected the kids that were willing to spend the money, take the time to go and do a stunt course. But there's a lot of coordinators that I grew up with that were from the School of Hard Knocks, where you had to learn your craft on the job. And I've actually seen guys get snubbed because they went through a stunt school, which just never made any sense to me. But it's you have to have a particular skill. Mine was fighting, and then it really helps to know somebody. But these kids today, some of them are so ridiculously talented. First time you see them do something, you know that they're going to be working steady.
And you mentioned fighting there. I believe Bruce Lee was one of your early childhood heroes. I was just doing a bit of research on Bruce Lee. His last film, I think he technically only appears in 40 minutes of it, and they had to use other bits of film from other movies and a lot of stand-ins. I think they were even superimposing people over other people's faces. They had some guy with a real big, ridiculous beard. What was it about Bruce Lee for you as a kid that really sort of stood out to you?
Joel, well, I'll tell you, I thought about that long and hard for some time. And then I remembered when I was just a little boy, I was standing in the bathroom doorway at the house, looking up at the pedestal sink, and then looking at my dad shaving. And during that conversation, somehow it came up. He said, Bradley, I don't want you to be a bully in this life. You don't pick on other kids. But if someone starts a fight with you, you clean their clock. So I always admired the guys that weren't the bullies and had to get back into a corner, but then could defend themselves. The Bruce Lee characters, like I was 6 years old when I forgot all about Batman and Robin when Kato came on the scene with the Green Hornet. I was 6 then. And then 7 years later, when I was 13, I saw the first Fist of Furies, Bruce Lee's first film that was actually called The Big Boss. And his character was a stand-up guy that didn't pick on anybody, but when his back got against the wall. So that's the kind of people and the kind of people I looked up to. And I just, when I found out Bruce Lee was, I had lived in Seattle and had all this history, because I got all sorts of history with Seattle being as close as we are, only 2.5 hours away, right? So I just thought he was a great guy. And if you ever want to see the real Bruce Lee, go on YouTube and punch in Bruce Lee, The Lost Interview. And it's a 1971 24-minute interview with a guy named Pierre Burton, who's a famous Canadian journalist. But before he got big, before anybody knew who he was in America, Pierre Burton interviewed him. And it's just Bruce Lee being Bruce Lee for 24 minutes. It's really, really fascinating.
And did you see Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? And I think a lot of people were a little bit upset by the depiction of Bruce Lee. I mean, it was sort of, tongue in cheek. Did you see that?
Oh, I did. I've seen it several times. I love the film. Yeah. I just think I was surprised that Quentin would depict Bruce Lee like that. But from everything I've read, the people I've talked to, Bruce Lee was so supremely confident, and supreme confidence can come across as arrogance.
Yeah.
I don't know if Bruce was the kind of guy that was a show off, but and I'm sure he came across as arrogant to a lot of people, but I've met a lot of his students. I've trained with a lot of his former students, and they all said he was just a great guy, constantly joking. And but they all say when you ask him if he was the real deal, they all get super serious. They go, "Oh yeah."
I think it's George Booth, the character that Brad Pitt plays. He's the stunt double for Leo, right. Leo's character there. You sort of been in the stunt world. Was there any kind of murmurs amongst the community or the industry who that was loosely based on, or just a Quentin Tarantino character?
No, I didn't hear anything about it being based on a real person. I know that Quentin Tarantino is a one of the directors that really respects stunt people. I've watched him behind the scenes directing Zoe Bell, and he loves watching a good gag as much as he likes watching a good acting scene, you know, and I really admire that about him.
From your time in the industry, who's probably the most interesting person or interesting actor that people might not know that you doubled for?
That's a good question. I doubled Kevin Sorbo on a show called Andromeda, but I was never a huge Charlton Heston fan until after he passed away, but I doubled Charlton Heston on a movie called Alaska. I also doubled Jack Palance on a TV show called Mysterious Ways. And one of the last things I did before I went on disability was I doubled Jeff Bridges for a couple of days on Tron Legacy. I didn't get a whole lot of interaction with him. Do you know who else I doubled is the English actor Alfred Molina?
Okay.
And he was an absolute sweetheart, very talented, super intellectual, and just a really nice guy.
I was going to say Jeff Bridges. I'm a massive Big Lebowski fan, the dude. So I mean, that could have been a cool person to stunt double for in that movie. I don't know there'd be much action, but you know, when he's drinking a beverage or smoking a joint.
Joel, I had years prior worked on this goofy Viking film or whatever it was, but his brother Bo was in it. And I asked Bo if I could get a picture with him. We took the picture, and after he snapped the picture, I went, "Thanks, Jeff." Oh, I mean, Bo. He was cool. He didn't get bitchy. He didn't get dinky about it, but he didn't laugh about it either.
Now, being in Canada, you've said that you weren't much of a wrestling fan growing up, but there's a wrestler called Bret the Hitman Hart who considers himself a Canadian hero. You're a Canadian. Would you consider Bret Hart a Canadian hero?
I would, Joel, in that I understand from my wrestling buddies that actually were, you know, in that scene for a while that, you know, the Harts were real wrestlers. Like, you know, there's a lot of guys in that business that are showmen, you know. I mean, I've heard guys quote saying Hulk Hogan wouldn't know a wrist lock from a wrist watch. And I've worked with Terry, great guy. But I like the Harts because they actually were the real deal. So Canadian hero, yeah, I would say that Bret Hart is a Canadian hero.
You might sort of respect as well. I guess, you know, like wrestling can be kind of considered, you know, just two big knuckleheads trying to beat the hell out of each other. But there's wrestling to its purest form is storytelling, which is kind of like filmmaking, right? You know, when done right, it's the best thing ever.
It's theater.
Yep.
And I worked doubling a guy on a low-budget kids show for Fox called Los Luchadors, and they were Mexican wrestlers by day and crime fighters by night. So we had to learn all these wrestling things, and I had to jump off the top rope and do all that stuff. And I've got the utmost respect for wrestlers. And as a kid, when I first started bouncing, getting back to my bouncing career, a lot of the bouncers were wrestlers, and I learned very quick, the last guy you want to get into a street fight with is a wrestler. I found interesting, Joel, because I've met lots of them. And to a man, they're super kind, sweet, and friendly people. And I got thinking, I wonder why that is. And then I realized, oh, when you take the male persona and you take the ego out of it because they know they're as tough as anybody in the room, they don't have to show off or put on any airs. And I mean, I met a lot of the guys, and they're great guys.
And I guess as well, like back in the day, like say from the 60s and 70s, even before, they were actual, you know, quote unquote shoot fighters. So like they could wrestle, or they had some form of, like you sort of mentioned, sort of skill. Like you mentioned with your stunts, you sort of, you know, taekwondo or karate, like, you know, you could defend yourself if need be, right? Most of them kind of had that, or they knew how to defend themselves. But I guess as well, like in the early days, a lot of these people that's all they had was wrestling. They were these sort of interesting characters that, you know, they didn't have a full-time job. They're either born into it via family or somehow fell into it. Now you had an interesting sort of childhood. Do you think if you didn't get into stunts, not that you necessarily would have become a wrestler, I guess the question really is, if you weren't in stunts, what do you think you would have eventually got into?
Probably growing weed.
Would that be a bit of a business now, being legal over in Canada, right?
You know, it's really changed the whole environment, because the government's trying to take control of it, of course, because they don't want you selling it, you know, behind, you know, other than through them because of the, you know, the tax money. But when I was a kid, I just knew so many people that were growing weed, and but I was raised not to to break the law. But if I hadn't gotten into stunts, I don't know, Joel, where I'd be today, either dead or in prison. And I know it sounds dramatic, but I bounced around my whole life, Joel. My father wanted me to be educated and sober, but I hated his guts, so I became a drunken idiot. And I just did whatever paid the bills most of my life. But I remember, since you asked, I remember being 30 years old and working a shift as a doorman. And I just thought, man, you got to get it together because you haven't got much more time. You're getting into your money earning years, and you're working for $50 a night as a doorman. That's not going to go anywhere. But and it was my karate instructor who became a stunt coordinator, a guy named Tony Morelli, that got me in the business. But I didn't really pursue it, Joel, because I so had him on a pedestal and kind of had my head up my ass. I always thought I wanted to be an actor. But Ken Kirzinger, who's actually the one that took me aside and said, Brad, you should go get a pager, a headshot, and a resume, and I'll take you around and introduce you to everybody. And he's a man of his word. And now we're doing horror conventions together, because he of course played Jason in Jason versus Freddy. I probably would have gone up north. I was never big on working unless it paid. So I might have gone up north and run big machinery, and done seasonal work through the thaw, and then come home in the winters. I have no idea.
And you mentioned your good friend there, Ken Kirzinger there, Jason, in Freddy versus Jason. And I think I remember seeing that in the movies and thinking that was absolutely amazing. That was like the first of its kind of that kind of horror crossover, sort of the Godzilla v King Kong type of stuff you would see back in the day. Ken is he's a big unit. He's about 198 centimeters. He's quite towering.
Yeah, he's another 3-4 inches taller than me. Yeah.
And we'll talk about wrestlers. Maybe he could have had a career as a professional wrestler.
Well, he tried to play in the Canadian Football League, and during a practice or an exhibition game, he blew his knee out. And that's when he gave up his dreams on football and started focusing on the stunts.
Yep.
He was actually only one course away from getting his degree, but he started getting so much stunt work, he just said, I'm going to go do this, and he's never looked back. And he's done very well for himself. He's still fairly healthy. I mean, we're all beat up. We've all got, long-term injuries. And but he and I are going to Birmingham, England, the first weekend of September. And then the third weekend of September, we're in Plymouth, Minnesota together. So I'm looking forward to that.
And so when you guys go traveling to these conventions, is it sounds like it'd be a good time. You get to meet fans and sign autographs and do all that sort of stuff. And then do you guys go out and, go have dinner with each other and, have a good weekend or week or whatever it is?
Well, we're, on the big day, which is Saturday, they usually ask us to, attend a VIP party so that people can kind of rub elbows with and but yeah, we try to we always make new friends. You meet new fans, and they're all such great people. I'm not a big horror fan, but I'm a big fan of horror fans because they're such nice people and so loyal to the genre. My God, we hang out and go to dinner with each other and friends.
And Ken sits you down over a beer and says, you got to pull your socks up, mate. You got an opportunity that's right in front of you and you don't realize.
That's exactly what he said, Joel. He told me, Brad, he says, why aren't you doing this full time? And I gave him my reasons. He says, no, man. He says, with the dollar where it is, the Americans are going to keep coming up here. And you're a couple sizes smaller than me, a couple sizes bigger than Tony. I think there's a spot here for you, Brad. And I tell you, I went straight out. I got the pager, I got the resume, and I got the headshot. And next thing I know, he takes me to this club, and I meet this guy named Charles Andre with the shortest brush cut I ever seen. I said, that's quite the haircut. He says, yeah, I'm doubling Robert De Niro. I couldn't believe my ears. He was doubling Robert De Niro on a movie called This Boy's Life, which was Leonardo DiCaprio's first film.
That's right.
And we've been friends ever since.
You mentioned the headshot. Is that the classic one online of you in black and white?
No. I'm talking 30-something years ago. So, and those have all gone by the wayside. The first headshot I ever had, Joel, I had long, dark hair. But in the picture, the way that the photographer got me to pose, I kind of had my neck cranked. And when I met people after giving them the picture, they saw the picture, then they met me. they're going, Brad, in that picture, your neck looks like it's this big. Like I thought you were a big beefy dude, and you're just a normal sized guy. And so I went and got new headshots. And but I remember the first time Charles and Kenny suggested I might ever get into stunts Canada. I thought those guys are dreaming that'll never happen, and it did happen. So.
You mentioned earlier you're doing the TV show Los Luchadors, where you were sort of doing the stunts and sort of end up coordinating. And it's sort of on a fateful day when I guess the first season wrapped that you get a phone call to be the double for Mike Myers of Austin Powers.
Well, we did the 13 episodes, and you're on hiatus, but we were 95% certain we were going to come back for a second season. But a guy named Brian Knight, who was one of the first ADs I worked with, he went to interview with the people, knowing he wasn't going to take the job. But as a professional courtesy, he went in there. And during his interview, they mentioned to him that they didn't know who their Canadian stunt coordinator was going to be and who their Michael Myers was going to be. And he said, well, you should talk to is Brad Loree. And I get this phone call out of the blue from this woman I've never met, asked me to come in. I thought they were, like I said, you said, I thought they were looking for a stunt double for Mike Myers, the Canadian comedian. And because I hadn't seen the movie in 18 years. And but I went in and did the walk for the director a few times. He turned to the producer and said, yeah, he'll be fine. And they didn't look at anybody else. They sent me down to LA. They cast my head. They built the mouse. Next thing you know, I was on set for 6 weeks.
Do you think that is so? Like, I'm not sure how it works. Like, I know each country is a little bit different. Like, there's a lot of films that get produced in Australia again because it's cheaper, and I imagine that's why they, in Canada because it's cheaper to do. Is there sort of like a rule, like there has to be a certain percentage of Canadian workers on set? Is that what I guess one of the main reasons being in Vancouver was cheaper, but you had to have local people, right?
Had to have local people. And I mean, if you're bringing everybody up from California, you got to fly them, you got to house them, you got to per diem them, you got to pay them the American rates. And at first they did that a lot because, some Americans think of Canadians as Mexicans in sweaters. That's literally how they think of us. So they didn't think there was anybody here that knew what they were doing. And back in the day, we were faking it as we made it. But today, there's crews up here that are as good as they come in the world. And as I understand it, it's much cheaper to build sets in Canada compared to California. And but yeah, Runaway Productions, Hollywood is where the brain trust is, but the actual logistics and the physical, the locations, they're mostly out of California now. A lot of them are anyway.
And so they take you to LA, they do the cast of your face for the mask, and you're thinking, oh, I'm doubling for this one. No, you are going to be Michael Myers.
When they told me that I was going to go to get my mask head cast, I said, wait, I got to go all the way to LA just to double some hummy actor. They said, no, you're not going to double the guy. You're going to be the guy. And because the one horror film in my life that I really, really appreciated was the first Halloween. If it had been any other show, Joel, maybe even Jason, I may have passed on it because I was the last 5 episodes of Luchadors. I was the coordinator and the stunt double, and I was making big, thick cake. And but when they said you're going to be Michael Myers, and I had no idea that it was going to turn into podcasts and conventions and other people, Ken and I both get hired on these low budget horror films because they want to use our name, So it's just turned into quite the thing. And the thing is, Joel, when Luchadors came back for the second season, they only did 2.5 episodes and they pulled the plug and said, that's it. And it was never seen again.
So you're on set. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, you've done the mask. Your first day on set. Like, I mean, is there any pre-meeting of like say for example, Mustafa Akkad, or are you meeting them on set? Like, how does that process look?
Well, I met everybody at the first meeting, the production managers and the execs and the director, and but then I had to go through a whole screen test, in costume. And at one time, Joel, they even had like a black mesh in the eyes. And I think we shot a couple of scenes with that mesh, and then Mustafa said, no, I want to see his eyes behind the mask. I want to be able to see there's a human being there. I guess somebody suggested that they had shot Michael Myers with a mesh in a previous film. So they thought they were going to do it again, but Mustafa put the kibosh on that. So they just blackened around my eyes. And then the mask came on, and little Velcro and little comb, and away he went. It was great.
Was he an intimidating figure? Like, not in, I guess, in a scary or imposing way, but be like, oh, that's Mustafa Akkad. Like, obviously, the Halloween fans know who he is. Like, did you not sort of been as big as a fan of the franchise at that time? Like, you sort of know the name or whoever he is. But was he an imposing figure? I mean, does he the pipe in the mouth or something while on set, or?
Well, no, he wasn't a very big man, but I was made to understand very quickly who he was. So he's like the godfather of the whole franchise. And so, I didn't, not that I stayed away from him, but I didn't impose on him, except for one time I went up to him and I said, Mr. Cod, I just want to tell you that I'm not a big horror fan, but the only reason I took this job is I'm such a huge fan of the Halloween series, especially the first one. And he put his hat on my face. He said, it would have been just that much better if you'd been in it. And I thought, what a sweetheart. What a very kind thing. It just made it just made my day.
You can sort of hold, that was the last real film for Halloween that he was the producer or part of, right? Because obviously would pass away a good few, I think 2005, a few years after, and that terrible accident or attack in Jordan.
Yeah. His daughter that he went back to Jordan or Syria for a wedding, and there was a terrorist attack, and the daughter got killed, and he had a heart attack. And I just thought, what a horrible way to go. And I remember emailing Malik and just saying, Malik, I don't have the words, but I'm absolutely brokenhearted for you and your family. And he said, thanks, Brad. And so now Malik's on got the reins, and I believe he's still in charge of that franchise. But I hopefully going to see him in October.
Because he was driving you around, was he?
Yeah. He picked me up at the airport and drove me to get my head cast, and he was sort of Dad's right-hand man at the time. And he told me about how Jamie Lee Curtis only had 30 seconds of non-dialogue screen time. How do you come up with this? That she owed. She said, whatever you can shoot in a weekend, I'll do. And he said she donates all her salary to the terminally ill children's ward at LA Children's Hospital, I guess. And which I just so admire. I'm just so honored to meet her, get to work with her. And yeah.
And with Malik, he's obviously, taken over the reins now. And I think I was speaking to Anthony Massey. He was sort of big with the website at the time, that it was a bit of a transition from Mustafa to Malik from the film side of things. I'm trying to think, like, things like, did you see that he was really eager to take over the family business, so to speak? You talk about Mustafa being the godfather. I guess this is the next in line, so to speak.
Well, he was, and he has an older brother named Tarek, but Tarek himself told me I'm the black sheep in the family. And so I think it was always predestined and predetermined that Malik would be the heir to the throne, and crappy way to earn it. But I think Malik's got at least Tarek, maybe some other brothers, but no, Malik was always the one that was groomed to take over the family business. So
yeah. And you mentioned Jamie Lee Curtis there. Everyone I've spoken to said that she was an absolute professional. Like, when you hit 100 reels, like, she would give out wine. Obviously, her part in the Resurrection was quite small compared. And you mentioned the 30 seconds of dialogue or non-dialogue there, but she was very giving. And obviously, I think she was a little bit. I think she wanted H2O to kind of be the finale, but obviously contractual. There's contracts, and when certain things make money, then they're going to make sequels. I guess the question being that never came across on set, that she obviously wasn't a big fan of the ending of H2O, the retcon, I guess you could say.
I don't know that she ever criticized the ending of H2O, but she did express. She was glad that she was going to be supposedly done with the franchise, because of course she always longed to be respected and appreciated for being a real actor. She wanted to shed that scream queen, but now that she's done all the things she's done, including winning the Oscar, I think she can appreciate what the horror genre did for her, which is why she agreed to come back and do these other films. And she told me at the time one day that she was done starring in film. She said, I'll do 2 and 3 week, guest spots. She says, but I'm done. But then Freaky Friday came along, and I think that was a really challenging part. And then Christmas with the Crumps or something like that. So yeah, I think she always longed to be respected in the same vein as her parents. You know, I because she did the Halloween movies and she had done another one, another horror film, and I guess she always wanted to break away from that tag of being the scream queen, you know, and you know when I started watching everything here and there, whatever it's called, all at once, I didn't even recognize her for the first couple of minutes until she spoke. I might watch it tonight because it's a little too fantasy, and I'm not a big fan of CGI, but I'm a huge fan of Jamie. So my nephew, he told me, no, Uncle Brad, you got to watch the whole thing because she ends up doing a bunch of kung fu fighting. So I got to see that.
Yeah, it's me and the wife watched that not too long ago. It's a lot happening at once, but it's a great film.
Yeah, well, it did very well at the awards. I'm really happy for Jamie. You could see when they announced her name that she was legitimately surprised. Yeah, so I was really happy for her.
Chris Durand, who did Michael Myers and Halloween H2O, said she's a sweetheart, but she swears like a sailor. So was she dropping a few F-bombs on set?
I didn't see that. But she's got a bit of she's got some rough edge to her for sure. She's a woman that grew up in Hollywood, and she doesn't take any guff. But she was very kind to my girlfriend and I. She let us stay in the trailer and hang out with her, and she'd give my girlfriend advice about how to deal with me. And you may have heard this story, but the day that we were going to do the kissing scene, which Jamie Lee Curtis's stunt double Donna Keegan told me, Jamie won't shoot that scene the way it's written. But my girlfriend needed the truck that day, so she came to work with me. And as I was unloading my stunt bags, Jamie comes running up and grabs me and dips me. Plans going on me. He says, "This is the way I think we should shoot the scene." And my girlfriend was livid when I got home. "You never told me you were gonna." I says, "Honey, I didn't think they were going to shoot it that way. I was told it wasn't happening, and I'll be wearing the mask." And anyway,
did she slip the tongue in?
No, she didn't. There's this. Oh, I did blow a few sets, so we had to do it over and over.
Oh, but yeah, and I think she would have had fun with that, and I think that was like a little nod. I think the MTV Awards, they had like the best kiss. I think that was a bit of a try to shoehorn that in there, right?
I'll tell you though, when she got wrapped Sunday afternoon, because she'd been saying that for, well, guys, I got to get to the airport, and they finally wrapped her, and she immediately ran over to me, gave me a big hug, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered in my ear, "You're delicious," and then ran off. And I was so stunned. I to this day, I'm not really sure what she meant by that, but I just thought it was very. And that's another thing I wanted to mention. She's only there for 3.5 days, and she bought us all a little crew gift, a little pocket Leatherman, with the knives and the whatever. So I thought that was really, and she had them all engraved. So I thought that was really sweet.
And again, that's sort of all I've heard from everyone I've spoken to, that professional and sweet. So it's glad to know, even though maybe not a fan of I guess storyline and direction wise, that she would do that, right?
Yeah.
And you did a bit of studying of all your predecessors, like watching all the Michael Myers, from the Nick Castles to the Dick Warlocks, and being like an actor / stuntman. Would have that been the most confusing thing to do, that you would have got confused on who you're not trying to mimic, but did you try to bring your own thing to the character? I feel like watching them all would have maybe you got too much in your head.
I fast forwarded through all the Halloweens, like from the second one on, and just watched the Michael Myerses. But because I thought that, to me, Nick Castle is the shape. Dick Warlock's a close second. I love Uncle Dick. He's a very good, very, very sweet man and a good friend. And but I watched them all, and then I went back to the first one. I love Chris Durand. I hated his performance, but he admits I never studied the guy. I just did it my way, and because I thought his Michael Myers looked like a man dressed up as Michael Myers. It didn't look like Michael Myers to me. It looked like a guy that was in costume for Halloween. But I tried to copy Nick Castle as best I could.
The 45th anniversary coming up, I sort of liken it to being in a certain fraternity of guys. Obviously, George P. Wilbur sadly passed away recently, but I guess out of all the guys who have donned the famous mask, do you have like a favorite that you go to on film, and do you have a favorite that you get to catch up and speak with?
Well, like I said, Nick Castle's the guy that I'll watch the first Halloween every fucking October for the rest of my life. I have to say, I thought the second one, I remember watching it in the theater. I thought, this as good a sequel as I've ever seen. If they hadn't made the first one, this still would have made the franchise super popular.
Yeah.
And I love Dick Warlock. We don't talk as often. He's getting a little older, a little harder of hearing. But no, I'm not in touch with any of the guys on a regular basis. But it's the same kind of thing as being on set. You always assume you're gonna run into him at a convention eventually, But we lost Jim Winburn and George Wilbur last year, and Uncle Dick. I shouldn't say this, but he's not a young man anymore, and but he's retired from the convention circuit so many times, Joel, I can't count that high. But he's hopefully coming to Pasadena this fall.
And with the 45 anniversary, is it good to kind of be among people that are beating the franchise?
Oh yeah. We're all kind of like family. The Halloween conventions is all about the Halloween franchise, so you're going to get to meet a lot of people and reminisce, and it's like old times. And because I'm coming up on, it's been almost 20 years since my first convention, and I remember when I first went to Pasadena for that first, I forget which, it was like 2004, I think, 2005. Anyway, I was just so nervous and I didn't know what to expect, and I got out of the cab and walked past the lineup with my suitcase. I could hear people whispering, "That's Brad Loree, that's Brad Loree." Of course, I was the new guy on the block, so all the guys wanted to have a drink with you, and all the girls wanted to have a hug.
You mentioned that convention. It might have been the 25th anniversary Return to Haddonfield one. I think Anthony Massey, who would go on to do the website for Halloween, was one of the organizers for that. It might not be that one, but there was a special sort of documentary that came off the back of that one, and your co-star Bianca, obviously the final girl, Sarah Moyer, says that she knew when you were nervous because you'd get a bit flatulent, some farting on set.
I have a reputation, as does my brother, for being a bit gassy, Joel. And yeah, I guess I was farting on set a lot. In fact, the first AD finally got this shoestring, and she put a bottle of Beano glued it to this necklace and put it around my head. And I got the first interview I ever did on camera. I was wearing this Beano, and they asked me about it, and I said, yeah. And then she was being interviewed with the whole big poster behind her, all that, and they asked her, "Is there any particular jokes or practical jokes that anybody played on there?" She says, "Well, not really, but Brad, who played Michael, had a real farting problem."
But surely it'd be funny to just see Michael Myers walking down the corridor, then just let one rip.
Oh yeah. There was, we did that a lot when the camera wasn't rolling.
And the mask was probably one of the more interesting masks in the franchise, because the way it was kind of designed, and there were certain scenes which had certain lighting on it, and it probably made it look really menacing. And obviously you've spoken about before using the shark eye, sort of how you would use your eyes and add into it. So it was definitely a unique mask and take on the Michael Myers character.
Well, it was super comfortable, and to this day, I still don't know if they cast everybody's head, or I'm wondering when they started doing that, because the original mask, as we all know, was a Captain Kirk mask. So I'm wondering, because I mean, when I look at the mask, I can almost see that it was shaped to my face, and I was just so lucky that how quickly it came on and how quickly it went back, came off. But yeah, it's a unique looking mask.
Now, Rob Zombie has been pretty vocal when he was doing the reboot of Halloween, that the Weinsteins, or Bob Weinstein, was quite critical or was hard to deal with. Was there any Weinstein, I guess, handling with Halloween Resurrection?
No, I don't remember meeting any of the Weinsteins. No.
And sort of speaking to Daniel Ferens, who was the writer on Halloween 6, he kind of said that he was shielded from a lot of potential sort of Weinstein, or that posse, so to speak, any issues there. Do you think because Mustafa was on set, he kind of shielded a lot of the talent or big players, if there was any things in the background, he kind of took heat?
Well, I think your big players stay in LA. I don't know if they come to visit their different projects that are abroad. Paul Freeman was the biggest executive that I remember being on set. As best I understand, I don't know how the upper echelon works. I just know to fall down on the X, they call action. But yeah, no, I don't remember any of the Weinsteins, or I don't remember anybody overseen other than Paul.
What about the premiere of Halloween Resurrection? Did you get to walk the red carpet?
When they had the premiere down in LA, they phoned me because they were going to arrange a car for me. And I said, well, you better arrange a plane and a hotel too, because I'm up here in Canada. I'm not paying for my own. So I didn't get to make the premiere. But I sort of think that the guy behind the mask should stay behind the mask. I think Michael Myers is more cryptic when he's not associated with any particular person that's behind the mask, if that makes any sense.
A bit of mistake.
Yeah. Which is what I thought we lost with the Rob Zombie films, although I never saw the first one. I just thought that too much backstory. He's too big. It took away the cryptic, and the mystique about the guy. Now we understand why he is and what he is, and this, that. There's no more mystery to the character. And I really was disappointed with the first one, and I've heard a lot of people say that the second one's just even worse. So I never even watched the second one.
You were all on board to reprise the Michael Myers role. Obviously, it would get rebooted and be in the hands of Rob Zombie. Do you think, let's say, there was a continuation from Resurrection, were you in talks or were you in contact with the brass to jump back on as the Michael Myers?
No. Malik was going to bring another horror show to Canada at one time, and he said, Brad, I'd love to give you the part if we do come. I don't think it happened, but I just got the part by the total fluke because it was shot in Canada. I don't have working papers for the States, and they're not going to fly me down. I mean, I don't know that they have a lot of respect for the artist, how much artistic expression it takes to be a guy in a mask. I mean, that's the only one they looked at. They're like, yeah, he'll be fine.
Said when you went to one of your first conventions, you were copping a lot of flack for letting Busta Rhymes kick you out of the window and all that. But what did you think? What did you think of Busta Rhymes' kung fu moves? You like you said, you've done taekwondo or karate. You know a thing or two about fighting. Were you there on set teaching him how to do that?
No, he'd been studying a style of kung fu called Hungar, I believe, and I didn't think twice about it. Joel, I'm just a stunt guy. It's in the script. He gets kicked out the window, fine. But the first dozen fans came up to me and just tore a strip because Michael Myers is supposed to be superhuman strong, and he's not supposed to get shit kicked by some rap artist. So I took a lot of flack for that, and I had a lot of people tell me they didn't like the film. And but today, 21 years later, I'm getting more and more young adults coming up to me and saying, Resurrection was my first Halloween movie in the theater, my first whatever period. And so you're Michael Myers to me. And I never thought about that. I always thought that everybody would think that their first one, Nick Castle, because that's my Michael Myers. But it's kind of nice that this new generation of fans is coming up. And I've just watched it the other day, a couple of weeks ago, with a producer-writer friend of mine who's a huge horror fan. And the more I watch it, the more I appreciate it. I don't want to say it was ahead of its time, but with the texting and the reference to Survivor, you're going to get voted off the island. I just thought it was really, I thought it was a good film. I thought it was scary, and I thought the acting was great. I thought the effects were great, and I thought it was brilliant the way they brought Michael Myers back after getting his head chopped off.
A couple of working titles was obviously Halloween 8. Then there was Halloween.com, Halloween Homecoming, MichaelMyers.com. Do you think those working titles may have been better than Halloween Resurrection?
Well, up until Resurrection, Jamie Lee Curtis got to pick the title of every single one, the ones she worked in, and she wanted to call Resurrection H2K1. That's what I believe. That's what it was. It was H2K1. It was the new millennium, and they were like, "No, we're not going with that." And I didn't hear about those other names because I'm pretty sure Resurrection was the name on the first scripts I got. And I do kick myself, Joel. I probably had, because they do rewrites all the time, so I had 2, 3, 4 of those scripts, and I could have gotten all the actors to sign those scripts, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I mean. Yeah. I remember my first convention, I was teasing Malik about giving me one of the masks because Dick Warlock had kept the mask, the knife, the boots, and the overalls, and they ended up selling them years later. And Malik first said, Brad, we don't just don't know where the masks are going to end up. They don't want them in some basement porn, I guess. But then I kept on him, and he said, yeah, Brad, he said, I'll get you a mask. But I didn't know, Joe. I didn't know to stay on it. And last year, the auction, one of my masks is like 3, maybe 4 that I actually wore in the film. and the auction went off in England, and it went for £50,000. It's like 83,000 Canadian dollars.
That's a fair bit of coin.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda. You know.
And I guess you said that you didn't know what you were getting yourself into. I think, did you do an interview with Fangoria? It was either pre or post filming, and that was the question, saying, "Do you know what you're getting yourself into?"
No, I do remember. I remember that Fangoria interviewed me at one time. There's been so many I can't remember when, but I do remember in the interview on camera where I had the Beano around my neck. I said, "Yeah." They asked me if you get any fan mail. I go, "I am getting approached by some fans, and I really appreciate it. Keep the letters coming because I promised to answer them all." But of course, I had no idea what I was saying, Joel. Anyway.
Anything on set that is a memory that you hold dear, or perhaps something that not many fans know about? I mean, because us horror fans, we seem to find out a lot, on the internet, or there's always things out there. But is there something that you could say that maybe fans or people don't know?
Well, I think I've talked about how afraid of me Bianca was before the day she met me. And I wasn't even, it was the middle of the day and I'm dressed like, in my t-shirt and jeans. But she was just scared to death. And to get over it, she started going everywhere with me, holding my hand like we were boyfriend, girlfriend. That's how she got over it. But, that and the kiss with my girlfriend, these are the kind of things. I mean, I'll remember them all after we hang up, Joel, but on the spot, there's not a whole lot else that really stands out. I just, it was just so much fun. I would love to have done it, again, of course, but it didn't work. It didn't happen.
And before we wrap up, your thoughts on Rick Rosenthal? He was the director. He directed 2, which you said was like a fantastic sequel. And I think amongst most Halloween fans, Halloween 2, holds up. Well, as a director, thoughts on Rick Rosenthal?
Oh, I love Coach. And I call him Coach because he and his son are hockey fans and he had these hockey t-shirts. But I only had one little misunderstanding when we were shooting the scene where I killed the guy with the tripod. I either wasn't paying attention or I didn't do it the way he wanted. He kind of barked at me a little bit and I barked back and that was it. But no, other than that, he was terrific. And it was a real honor to get to work with him. Whenever I watch Resurrection, I tell people, now watch this guy as the university professor. This is the best actor in the whole movie. And in that scene, when they pan up to Bianca, they go past my girlfriend, the one that freaked out when she found out I was kissing Jamie. And the guy that I killed with the tripod was ended up being a roommate of mine. When I watch Resurrection, I get to see Rick again. I get to see my ex again. I get to see my buddy Brad again, and and just remember all the behind the scenes.
The next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to look at that panning shot. I'm going to try to find the ex-girlfriend. Can you give us a hint on what side where she's sitting?
When they pan up towards Bianca, she will be in a burgundy top with, I think, a jean jacket, glasses, dark hair, and she'll be in the lower right hand. She'll be kind of in the center, and then as the camera comes up, she fades off to the right side. We're still friends. I'm still in love with her. But anyway, yeah, she was in it, and then I think about all the people we got to double the actors for the different scenes, and because the guy Bill Lawrence that doubled Bustafer when he hits Michael with the shovel, Michael pushes him and he flies back into the wall. I'm telling you, I mean, it was dimly lit, but from 10 feet away, you couldn't tell who was Buster and who was Bill. I think he was I'd never seen a double look so much like his actor. He's fantastic. So anyway.
Did your girlfriend get paid, or that was just, hey, you want to be in a movie?
Oh, she got paid, I think, background, like extra work. She wasn't getting stunt pay, but she got a check from the production, and yeah.
that made up for Jamie Lee slipping the tongue in.
Well, here's something I can tell you, Joe, as you asked about behind-the-scenes stories. Jamie Lee Curtis's stunt double, Donna Keegan, who was the American coordinator, she just took her shine to me immediately. And when she met Jade, she took her shine to Jade, and she wanted Jade to double Bianca. But I had just gotten into Stunts Canada, and I talked to some of the guys, and they said, Brad, it looks like you're using your position to hire your girlfriend, who's not an established stunt person. She's not in our group. She's not a veteran. There's other girls So I ended up hiring my boxing coach's daughter, who did a great job, and she was a better double than Jade. But Jade was very upset with me, and we had a little bit of a spat around that. But anyway, I still appreciate that Donna wanted to do that for me. And but I said, Donna, I can't let this happen. My name will be mud after you leave town. I'll be in trouble with the group because there's politics, like anything.
Yeah. Brad, like always, you've been very gracious with your time. Now, you are doing conventions and all that all around the world. You said you're going over to England and you're doing the Halloween 45 anniversary and that. But what's the best way for horror fans and Halloween fans to keep in touch with what you've got coming up?
That's an excellent question, Joel. And I don't really have an appropriate answer, although I will tell you that I have this writer-producer friend that wants to help me develop a TikTok page or channel, whatever it's called, where I'm going to present myself as the sort of a horror film critic who hates horror films, that was in a horror film, and just sort of interact with the fans that way. And that way, maybe I can flog some autographs on that on that, whatever it is. I'm not a technological guy, Joel. I'm 63, right? But I also want to have it somehow. I've had my battles with booze, drugs, and food, and I'm still in recovery from some of my addictions. And I would like to, if there's any horror fans out there that want to talk to me about recovery, and if I can help people that way, I'm hoping that that's what we're. Joel, it's all talk until it happens. So, and I know nothing about it unless this person helps me. I'll be buggered. But I just Google my name. If there's anything new coming up, I guess it'll be there. I don't know. I have a lot of people. I have a lot of fans try to friend me on Facebook, but I hate Facebook and social media, Joel. I have a very hard time giving this person my time and not that person. And so I apologize for that because like I said, I'm not a horror fan, but I love horror fans.
But that sounds interesting. The sort of the horror movie critic who doesn't like horror, and just talking about people with addictions and recovery. That's something that's very, I think, would be a lot of benefit to a lot of people who are suffering or going through, or know someone who's going through that. Right?
Well, I almost cashed it in a few years back, Joel. So I'm. And the whole thing about the AA program, not that I'm a gigantic advocate, but Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob found that when they helped another addict, that's where they got helped. That's where they got spiritual. That's where they got a purpose. And that's what really helped them to stay sober. So if I can help people, if I can counsel some, I don't care how old they are or where they're from, they got addiction issues, I would love to, so I'm hoping this TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is. So look for that. So we'll see where that all goes. And I hope you keep in touch, Joel. Thank you so much. Hello again, and goodbye to everybody down under. And I'm a big fan of your country and your people.
Brad, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you so much. And, life's short. Hopefully you can get this thing off the ground where you help others, because I think, life's short, and helping others, it's something that's very underrated.
Joel, if you ever find a reason to want to do this again, please let me know down the road. And if you have any interest in doing this with Ken Kirzinger, I don't know if you've reached out to him, but Kenny and I talk, and if I recommend somebody, he usually agrees to do it, and vice versa. So we look out for each other.
You've been absolutely amazing. You got fans out there, and people might want to slag off Halloween Resurrection, but like you said, there's a lot of people out there that absolutely love it and love you. So stay positive, and it was great speaking with you.
Cheers, Joel. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Talking Shape, the ultimate Halloween franchise podcast created by the fans. Make sure to stay up to date with the latest episodes by following Talking Shape on Twitter @talking_shape and liking us on Facebook. Feel free to give us a review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. We appreciate your support. Until next time.
Go home! Go home!